This weekend, it's MGC time, and we have a lengthy recap of the show, plus we sing the blues in the woods. I'm Ryan.
I'm Andy.
And this is Weekend Rental, episode 175. Well, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Weekend Rental, the annual, much anticipated by us, MGC recap episode, which is, of course, the Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which now brags, and I believe it, that it is the largest retro gaming convention and arcade and pinball convention in the United States, which...
Really?
Based on the attendance on Saturday, I have a hard time arguing that isn't probably the case. Because, wow, that was a lot of people.
That was a shit ton of people. It really made me put into perspective about how much people are missing out on Friday, because
yes,
if there's nothing, you can't get on anything on Saturday.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, MGC is technically open Saturday and Sunday, but then every year they've done, well, at least as long as I've been going, there's always been a preview night or early access night, and not everything is set up. There's no vendor hall, but the majority of the stuff is set up as far as like the arcade room and like the history museum. And they try to, I think they said they limit ticket sales to that to about 10% of normal capacity. So there's still a good amount of people, but really, if you're there to enjoy the arcade stuff and get access to some of that, check out the history museum stuff, Friday night is almost a must anymore, because you are not going to get a chance to play the game, the latest pinball game or the one arcade cabinet that's your favorite on Saturday and Sunday without at least a good amount of waiting for people to get off machines. This year, even just getting to the machines, there were so many people walking through there. It was unbelievable. Yeah. We kind of gave up because you and I and our sons, oldest son in your case, we had gone to the Friday night and had a good time, and it was busy, but I mean, you could still basically get to any table or arcade you wanted to play. It wasn't a big deal. Which is always nice because Stern always unveils their new tables, or at least close to unveiling. If they're not premiering at the show, it's relatively new. So they had the Jaws on display this year, which, I mean, yeah, if you're not paying for Friday night, you really, I just couldn't imagine being a person who is into that stuff and it's your first experience and you're only going on Saturday. You'd be so frustrated with it.
Be miserable. Yeah, it would be terrible. And, and like Friday, playing those new pinball machines, you really want to like play them a few times, know? Like you can't just play one game of the new pinball and really get it.
Right.
So like Friday is nice because you don't really feel pressured to be like, I have to get off this machine.
Especially if you're the person who wants to play the deluxe version of the table, because there's always fewer of them and everybody wants those. I think this year, though, I liked the standard table of Jaws more than I liked the deluxe table, I think.
There wasn't a huge difference. I mean, other than the Jaws popping out, but I don't know if there was a whole lot gameplay difference. Was there?
There was one extra paddle on that second floor, but it didn't do much to change the game for me. I will say that
I could never get up there anyway. So
anytime I did, I overlooked the fact that I had a flipper up there and I was just not using it. I will say I thought Jaws was going to be kind of a lame IP, but I really liked that table. I liked how, and what I liked about it is like some pinball tables almost require an instruction manual to understand the staging and what you need to do. But Jaws was very straightforward in the point of like, okay, it was clear in the directions. The objectives were clear. You're targeting the shark, you're doing the harpoon attacks, it felt very natural to jump into and have a pretty good grasp on what you were supposed to do within the first couple games, I think. I liked it a lot. And I liked that, you're just fighting a shark. I mean, it was cool.
And more often than not, I mean, you were going to get a multi-ball at some point, know?
Yeah.
Which is always fun. There's to be pretty liberal on giving those out I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, my only real complaint with it was those rails and the chutes that you needed to hit on the right side of the table required you to be very much off the tip of your left flipper, and that was tough to do. Like if you're the type of person who's not like 100% confident in that, like you just don't want to risk, losing the ball down the hole. So I didn't get a lot of those shots. It was pretty rare if I got one up there.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen another table that just has like a ball, because this thematically there's a boat and there's just a pinball in the boat.
Yeah.
And it's always there. Yeah. It just, you hit the back of the boat and that kind of springs the ball inside the boat up toward some things that you're supposed to hit.
Yeah.
That's what triggers Jaws most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that on a couple tables, but you don't see it a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, my kids had trouble hitting it because they're not getting as good at, like strong shots.
Oh, sure.
Off the flippers.
Yep.
So it was tough for them to get enough energy for that to really launch forward enough. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty cool idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was pretty well placed. Like, at least for me, like I was nailing that thing like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. And, it's always cool with the new pinball tables, how they've licensed, the video and stuff. So you're getting the one-liners and the scenes from the movie that just make you kind of like really get into the theme. So
yeah,
I wouldn't turn down that table. I as much as it pains me to say it, I think I like that table better than I like the Foo Fighters gameplay. Foo Fighters has a lot of hole shots. There's a lot of like those balls are sunk and fucked. And I like the theme of that one better, but I went back and played a couple of the Foo Fighters table from last year, and then I was like, nah, I'm just gonna go back to Jaws because I was having way more fun with that. I did. Was it Saturday or no? It was Friday night. I got into an insane rhythm on the Beatles pinball table, and I set up like a crushing leaderboard score, like 40 million or something stupid.
Really?
Just like I had a multi-ball going for God knows how long. It was the most insane like ball 2 run I've ever had. So it was wild.
That's awesome because there was a lot of people playing on that on Saturday. There was like 5 people deep on that line.
I'm sure somebody just decimated my score on Saturday, but for Friday night I reigned supreme for at least a little while. So.
Well, that's the fun part is like when we first got there on Friday, I got the number 1 score on one. I'm like, how long is this going to last? Like an hour tops.
Hey, at least you got your brag in, like, because I was standing next to you. So you're like, hey, look at this, look at this. I'm like, oh, nice. I was secretly pissed because I had just left that table. So I was like, God, you crushed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ryder and I had been number 1. So, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it was a fun Friday night. I really liked it, and then. We went and got lunch, and unfortunately our food order took like 35 minutes. I think your son was about out of patience with us waiting for our food immediately after finishing his pizza, which I can't blame him. And the wait we had for our food was not worth it. And then it was funny because the entire time we're waiting, your son's just like, let's go. I'm like, you guys don't have to wait. And then my son is like, can I have $1? Can I have $1? And the reason, they were both just like, I think not wanting to be sitting there. And my son was annoying because he wanted $1 for an arcade game that was sitting behind us. I was like, no, I'm not giving you $1. For one, I don't have a dollar bill on me. And we literally just are going back to the greatest like free play arcade possible. Yeah. So that, like, it got to the point where like I was basically like threatening to leave him with a homeless person if he didn't stop it. And then the icing on the cake, as I text Andy the next day, we went back there with my family to eat, and then he got his $1 and then went over to the machine only to realize that it only accepts debit cards anyway. So he annoyed Andy and I endlessly the entire time we were there for zero reason at all. It was great.
Which is crazy that machine they're paying 40 cents for transactional fees.
Yeah.
Cards,
Like, yeah, I'm sure nobody uses it. It's got to be like once a week some idiot does it. Because who's going to take a credit card or their Apple Pay and play a freaking arcade game? I don't know. But yeah, and then good. That thing goes till midnight on Friday nights. I think both our sons and ourselves were pretty well exhausted by the time Saturday rolled around. But yeah, it was. I mean, we hung in there though, made it to midnight. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's. I mean, if anybody's on the fence, you have to go Friday. I think. It's a standard.
Yeah, and I think like the part of Midwest Gaming Classic that I've always appreciated the most over other retro conventions is just the fact that they put in the work for the history and the background, like those displays that show you like cartridges through the years, or like write-ups on why certain consoles are important. Because it's not just that they have the rare and hard to find stuff, it's they'll do write-ups on all of it. So if that's important to you and getting to play those arcade games are important to you, Friday, have to do it. If you're just there to buy shit, whatever, go Saturday. Actually, maybe
I did notice they got rid of almost all the vintage computers. Like, remember there used to be like a whole shit ton of old computers. Like, that stuff is not there anymore because it's just that never got played, I think.
Well, and I'm sure the wear and tear on it too. Yeah, because they used to have a lot of like DOS stuff. It's like if you weren't the type of person who understood how to even like execute those games, yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that, but yeah, they used to have that whole section, and that's kind of been overtaken by like LAN play stuff. Like this year, they had like a whole section just dedicated to Halo. I was jumped in a game with my son. I was just like mercilessly destroying people. It was great. I felt
I played for a little bit. And I had the worst controller possible. I don't know if they had the dead zone set really weird on that one or what, but it was awful. It was not working the way it should have. But
yeah, what I thought was interesting this year too on preview night was like they actually had, I assume because they ran out of space, 2 or 3 vendors in that area. So it was weird to see people like purchasing games and shopping on that night. But so speaking of that, I mean, when Saturday rolled around and they opened up the vendor hall, that was by far the largest vendor hall they've ever had there. I mean, it was at least a third larger than anything they've done before. It was absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Completely different landscape from the year before, even though like a lot of the usual sellers you'd see weren't there. I thought it was wild that the previous year was like very heavy on like several import resellers that were just doing like PC Engine and like Japanese GameCube, and like that was all gone this year. The 1 or 2 people you did find selling import stuff, because I was like, oh, I'll grab some like dirt cheap PC Engine CD games, right? Because I got the Analog Duo. Every title I pulled out was like $25 or higher.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And just the year before, it would have been, that stuff would have been $4 or $5.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, the import stuff, even like the most like crazy non-rare stuff.
Yeah.
Just because it was import, another $5 on top of it, or $10, or it was just crazy.
I did get a little sick to my stomach when I saw that GameCube like Disney Mickey Hoops game that I traded to you like forever ago. One of the sellers had it for $1,500, and I was like, fuck. I know it's not worth $1,500. It's probably several hundred, but I was like, God damn, of course. Like, I thought it had a good value when I traded it to you for stuff. And I mean, it's not like I didn't get good stuff back, but it's like the inflation on GameCube stuff is unreal. So.
Oh yeah, there was so much stuff there that it was like, I think that's the part that's getting me is I'm starting to see a lot of the stuff that I used to buy in store, all the time. I used to be able to find it all the time. And, I sold it for a good amount then, but now it's just crazy amounts. And then you're just thinking about like, if you would have
just sat on it,
saved all those. Yeah.
That's the problem now though, is like people are wise to that. So you do get all these people that go to these conventions and they'll just speculatively buy stuff that's like already kind of pricey, but they're like, this is trending. And I'm going to, I even heard a guy talk about that when he's walking around the floor talking to his buddy. He's like, yeah, what I do is like, I just watch what's creeping up and like, I just buy it, sit on it, and then flip it. And it's like, well, cool. I mean, I get it. We all do it to some extent, but we're all creating a massive, massive problem and we probably shouldn't be.
That's just a bubble at that point. Yeah.
I think the favorite part of Saturday, the start to the day, was the thing that irritated me the year before too. Is that you get in? Everybody has to get there, right? Got to get in the vendor hall first, so everybody queues up in this massive line. So what happens is this line like snakes back and forth across the vendor hall. But then I get so annoyed because people are so stupid at being like sheeple that they just like they'll walk in the line, not realizing that you don't need to walk 50 feet in the other way to come back to where you're ultimately going to go in. If we all just agree that you stand in place and we peel off and continue to walk when it's our turn, we don't need to do that. So I eventually got just fed up with it. And I saw the line going back down and it was like 30, 40 yards away. And I just stopped. And my wife and my kids, they followed and went all the way to the end. And I just stood there. I was like, nope, not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I waited until the line came back. I turned and I just walked. And Jill's like, oh, those people behind you look like my wife. She's like, those people behind you were pissed. They look like they wanted to kill you. I was like, well, they're morons. I'm like, I'm not.
Yep.
It's like the littlest things that just take me to like rage, but it's so stupid. It's so stupid that people do
that. That is funny.
So yeah, I started off my day with irritating a bunch of people, which is probably normal, I guess.
That's fine.
When we ran into each other pretty early on, so it was kind of nice.
Oh yeah, yeah. The vendor hall was weird because it was a lot less games.
Yeah,
there was not a ton of people that were selling games.
Yeah,
compared to it used to be like 90%, and now it's like plushies and
the
all this other stuff, and then artist stuff. Yeah, so much artist stuff. And then the cards, the Pokemon cards, and all that stuff is just ridiculous now.
Yeah, there were too many vendors that were just Pokemon and like D&D, in my opinion. I could have done without that. Both my stupid kids bought like $20 cards. It's like, oh, they're just a party. I'm like, you're gonna lose that card. We're never gonna resell it. Why are we buying $20 cards? Like,
yeah. There was one guy though that had a whole stack of CRTs, which I thought was hilarious. Yes. It's like, oh, we're at this point now where
they were reasonably priced.
We're hauling these things.
Assuming
some of them. I mean, yeah.
Like I'll pay $120 for a refurbished 13-inch. Like, what are the good ones?
The PVMs, yeah. I thought about that one, and then I looked down at like the big flat screen CRTs on the bottom, and they were like $350. I'm like, holy crap!
So, just on a side note to that, I was telling Andy before we started recording that my wife and I went and looked at a house that had an open house for sale today, and I got super excited because we were down in the basement in the storage room, and there was a giant box for a Sony Wega. Like 34-inch. I'm sure there was not a TV in that box, but my mind was just spinning like, oh my God, like if that TV's in there, like I need this. And then, but yeah, I did think that was interesting that they were selling that. A lot less to almost none, maybe, of the I'm getting out of my collecting. Usually there's like 3 or 4 of those guys. I don't know if there was any this year, really.
No.
The sad part is like I was really looking forward to the THC vendor being back with edibles this year, and he wasn't back. They didn't have one, so I was like, damn it! I was gonna get like a quickie and enjoy my walk around the vendor hall, but whatever.
And you didn't get your tattoo either. Disappointed.
No, I know. I didn't get my taint tattoo. Couldn't convince the wife. Otherwise, I'd have totally done it. So did you guys pick up much, or did you pick up anything in particular? I'm curious.
I did not buy a single game.
Wow. Okay.
Which is crazy.
Kids bought some stuff, I'm sure, though.
Yeah. My daughter bought a backpack.
Okay.
She bought a Pikachu backpack. And then the other kids bought cards. They're all into that stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my son bought a $160 custom painted PlayStation 5 controller. So, and then he as he was bragging, he was going to send pictures and flex to all his friends. His words, not mine. And then his one friend that he plays Fortnite with, he immediately FaceTimed him when he got home. And then the kid was like, "No, I don't like it." So my son was just pissed. He's like, "He's being an asshole." I'm like, dude, like, maybe just enjoy the controller. Like, whatever.
Yep.
And now they're not even
don't buy it because of that.
Yeah, and I was like, so I popped in the last couple of days. I was like, "Why aren't you using your new controller?" He's like, "Oh, this season of Fortnite sucks. Maybe next season." I'm like, dude, you spent $160 on a controller and you're not even gonna play it because Fortnite sucks right now. Like, come on.
Wow.
Find another game, kid. But yeah, that was his big purchase. My daughter bought like, I don't know, like 3 little purse bag satchel things and like a bunch of jewelry and t-shirts. I think my wife got a t-shirt too. So yeah, she bought the stuff I would have expected her to get. And then yeah, I didn't buy much. I bought one 3D printed sign because it was kind of like that Nintendo Fix It logo or whatever, you know, like the hotline or helpline. So I bought that, put it out in the arcade, and then I bought 2 NES homebrews. There's one like it's, I don't know if it's a copper jacket, but the guy had like he had made this homebrew and it was like complete in box and everything, and he only wanted $30. So like $30 for a homebrew with a box, it's totally worth it. And then I went over to like that I forget the name of the company, but they made like the Haunted Halloween and stuff too. And they had that Full Quiet game, which came out last year, I think. And I heard some pretty good things about, so I bought that. And that was it. And then I got some swag from the Nintendo booth because Nintendo was there handing out.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I don't even know if I broke $100. So no, I didn't. I came in at under $100, which is crazy.
Wow. Yeah,
that's how much I used to spend. I was telling my wife, I was like, I used to like squirrel away like $1,000 just so I could blow it all on this thing.
And yeah, and how many trips to the ATM? And yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah, it's changed a lot for us.
I really wanted some Jaguar stuff, to like add some new stuff, but there was almost.
I didn't see anything really.
I would say like even the stuff I would normally buy, it was definitely, you could definitely tell it's shifting more to the PS2, Xbox, GameCube generation. Like that was really where stuff was at. A lot of people buying boxed consoles too. Like I don't know how many people I saw walking around with boxed NESs, and it's like, I don't know. That surprised me because I didn't think that was that hot of a market anymore. But
we need to talk about this mystery box thing because
oh my gosh, yes.
I don't know what scam those people are how they got so many people to buy that thing. I can't imagine there's anything worthwhile in most of those boxes.
Yeah, so it was like this vendor that had like, I don't know, they were like god damn near like dorm fridge size boxes that were either NES controller themed or Game Boy themed on the exterior of the box. They were $50, and they claimed there was an Amazon value of at least $250 in every box, and every box was different. And they must have only been there for Saturday, because Saturday, like midday, all of a sudden there was a line that was like 100 people deep. So they must have been doing some sort of like buy one, get one half or some sort of crazy deal.
I don't think so.
No? You think people were just eager to buy them?
They were, I think so.
Oh God. Yeah. So everyone you saw walking around with these, and I was like, that's a great idea.
Because there was one guy that was like, yeah, but it's ridiculous to have that, like that amount of demand. Right. It was just a line like that.
Yeah. And the idea in theory is like sound, but like, you know, you and I were talking, it's like, well, yeah, you're going to get your money's worth arguably, but it's not going to be shit you really want. I mean, you're basically taking garbage home. Because I've had kids who have bought those
keychains and whatever.
Yeah, it's kitschy stuff. You get one good item, then you get a bunch of stuff. You're like, well, I guess, you know. Did you see anyone open them though?
Nope.
Yeah, me either.
I don't know what was in them, but maybe I should watch a video. I'm sure there's unboxings of it somewhere. But
well, it weren't they running some sort of deal where like one box had like a golden ticket and you got like something for it?
I think there was one with a Switch or something in it. I don't know.
Oh no shit. But okay. Yeah. I looked at that and I was like, for even when I saw the initial price for like $50, I was kind of like, well, that's probably good. If you like, I fully expected one of my kids to be like, I want one of those, and neither one of them said anything, and I sure as shit didn't have room for it in my car. So
Well, and the fact that to haul that thing around the
right,
entire all the time too.
yeah, yeah. If you weren't staying across the street at a hotel where you could just unload that, that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a good show. It's just it was so many people by that time. Like I honestly feel like I walked through the vendor hall like two or three times, but I never really stopped to look at anything. Like especially like
Hmm.
the game booths were just so overrun with people. I just
Yep.
and I just don't have the ambition anymore to just dig through it like I used to. You know, you'd go prepared with what I needed. Pretty much ever since that app got updated and I lost like my cataloged NES collection, I've just kind of given up on.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I don't know from memory that I certainly don't have it, and even if I don't have it, I'm not gonna buy it. I don't know. I'm a retired collector, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's a lot to dig through
Hmm.
on those. I mean, you really have to, and each one, some of them are just like bins stacked on top of each other, and you know, I like Mobile Game World a lot, but their setup is not a
Conducive to a
good
lot of people.
setup for a convention.
Yeah, there were a few booths like that where it's like, well, if I have to like funnel into a 4 foot wide U-shaped hole, like I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do
Hmm.
that because I don't want to be stuck here like grinding up against some dude. Not not great. Yeah.
Yep. Did you stay for the whole concert?
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah, we saw you guys leave
Yeah, it's
early.
pretty good. Yeah.
I just like that you guys like
It's
came and sat down behind us, and the first thing he does in the first intermission is science, bitch, and we've all got our kids sitting there. I was like, ah, yeah. So Andy's
Yep.
talking about Beaker, who's like a Milwaukee area punk band. I would say they're like very heavily influenced by you know the Descendants and that sort of stuff. And generally, I've liked their concerts really well because they did like a greatest hits, and it was always like you get some Descendants, they do some Blink 182. But for whatever reason, I guess I haven't watched them the last year or two. But this year they only did their songs, which I know like two of. So it was really
Yeah.
disappointing. I mean, not that their music isn't good, but that wasn't what I was expecting because I'd like really sold it to my wife. It's like, oh, it's so good. Like they play all these songs and they didn't do any of that.
That's I was surprised by that too, because yeah, I remember they were always doing that and Dead Kennedys and a whole bunch
Yeah.
of stuff like that, and it was, from what we saw, there was nothing to that.
No.
I wonder if it's like because like a venue has to have some sort of license, right, to allow covers to.
Oh, really?
I think it's a bar thing. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass on this, but
Yeah. Yeah, it
I
was a
think
weird choice
there
though.
is something for that, but
And then for whatever reason, they didn't like level check the main singer, so like you really couldn't hear anything he was
yeah,
saying the entire time anyway. Which,
yeah.
but their new guitar player, oh my god! Like every song they played, he had like a fucking awesome solo.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
was cool. And their drummer looked like he probably just graduated high school.
Yep.
So I did buy their CD this year, so I got that.
Okay. Yeah, kids were complaining about how loud it was, and I'm like, oh, okay, come on.
My son too. He kept looking over at me. He's like, I can't hear anything. It's just ringing. Is that normal? I'm like, yep. I'm like, welcome to a concert,
Yep,
bud. And
that's
he's like,
that's a show.
am I supposed to feel it in my chest? I was like, yep. That's normal, son.
Yep.
So yeah, nobody was impressed, but it was nice to get 30 minutes to just
And then it was like,
not walk around.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my kid said the same thing. I can't understand what he's saying. It's like, number one, that's maybe good, and number two, that's
Right.
normal.
Right.
A lot of
Yes.
times it shows.
Yeah. Yeah. I was with you. I thought we were down for like a fun little, like, you know, pop punk covers thing. And it was just kind of like, well, all originals. It's like, well, that's fine, but not why I
Yeah.
came to watch this. I mean, I like Squirrel Killer. I mean, that song's good, but which they end every show with. But
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of I guess that's another thing that's fun with MGC is like there is so much going on because they've got a concert stage going on all day. So you get bands like that, or you get people doing like video game covers or like playing live to people playing video games. You know, they're doing the music, and then
Mhm.
in the vendor hall, there's like a wrestling arena, so you got like wrestling happening, and there's just a lot to see and do, which you'll just never have the time. I mean, and that's not even including like all the maker studios and like the panels, and it's it's got a
Yeah.
lot going on.
I they're I feel like they doubled that size of area where the people bringing their indie games and
Yes.
kind of showing that.
Yeah, because they've always had like
Um,
that NES room for dedicated homebrew, but now it's like, yeah, devs for like Steam. And I mean, there was probably
yeah.
there's 2 rows. I mean, there must have been like 20, 30 games.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting you played it, it's usually a developer there talking about their game and
Yep.
telling you how it works. And there was one that was not ready for prime time, I will say.
Oh yeah, we played that one too after
I
you.
felt bad for
Yeah.
the one where the castle and yeah, that one
Oh,
was
maybe not. I was thinking the
uh,
dinosaur one. I played that
oh yeah,
dinosaur
that one
girl
is
one too.
that
I
one, yeah, there's a couple bugs in that, like the direction, like it doesn't change direction very,
Yep.
very well. That was a bug, but this other one, it was completely broken. He had to go like he's like, I don't know how you did that. But yeah, you're stuck. So I need to go leave. He had to go like reset it.
That's funny. Were you playing it or your son?
We were both playing it, and he was just
Okay.
both on both sides. He's like, "Oh, this is I don't know. This is not. Yeah, normally you would do this." And it's like, "Yep,
Well, I mean, it's good. It's good feedback, I guess, from a development standpoint.
hmm
So,
yep,
yeah, yeah, that's always fun to
yeah."
see, and I
That's kind of
like
cool.
that there's the dedicated NES homebrew stuff, and really, there's a lot of homebrew there in general. I mean, obviously, you had John Riggs and John Hancock there too, selling their hacks and
Hmm.
stuff. So,
Well, and that's I was telling Amanda that too. That like originally it was kind of a novel idea to, and then be like, "Oh yeah, I get a homebrew," and you felt like you were like you were staying ahead of the game in that.
yeah,
But there's just no way to get them all anymore. There's just way too many of them, and
yeah.
you
Well,
can't even really collect them.
and now like MGC is like the last couple of years, they've always done so for several years. Like I want to say 6 or 7, they've done a homebrew game that was exclusive to the show through VIG, but now Very Important Gamer, which is like their Do All the Things package. You get a bunch of extra stuff, including that game every year that's only available at the show. But now this year and last year, they've started doing like 6 or 7 homebrews or ROM hacks that are exclusive to MGC. They've got the MGC branding. They're like one of however many. And I think they had like a Jaguar port, something on the Genesis, some more stuff on the
Hmm.
NES. And it's cool, but you're right. It is a ton. I mean, you could probably build a whole collection just buying homebrews at this point.
Right.
And the thing with homebrews, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, is it's very rare that a homebrew is like what I would consider genuinely fun or goes above and beyond. There's a lot of and that's not that the other games don't have merit, but there's just a lot of single screen or just like palette swapped things where it's like this isn't really another game that you should be charging me $50 for. You know what I mean?
Right. You're doing Zelda, you're doing Castlevania, or it's
Right.
some really out of the box idea that, like you said, is very simplified.
Yeah. I even to some extent get irritated with Mega Cat Studios. I like what they do in general, and they've got a lot of games now on Switch. They've ported over that you can pick up cheaper, but they to me are kind of notorious for here's a game on this console that we like. We're going to do the same thing but slightly different with different graphics. It's like, well, okay, this is your Punch Out or this is your Kickle Cubicle. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? I get kind of annoyed with some of those releases that they do, but then they'll put out something amazing like Coffee Crisis or something like that too. So don't know. There's a time and a place, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty selective about what I pick up as far as homebrew anymore because I've gotten some real duds.
Yep.
I actually miss that there's not more like localized stuff. There used to be, you could find like the Sweet Home conversion or something that was exclusive to the Famicom or PC Engine that somebody would port over to a US version. Like there was none of that this year.
No, you don't see any of that. Yeah, I wonder if that's like they're buttoning it up to, Nintendo's there, they're like, nah, you can't have ROMs here.
Yeah. Which Nintendo might have a whole new problem on their hands based on what Apple's doing now. I mean, not that emulation isn't everywhere, but I saw in the news that it sounds like emulation might be coming to iOS legally through their store. So that opens a can of worms.
Yep.
Especially because there's just such a large market of, I think, casual gamers who just, they're not doing the things to side load apps onto their iOS. So if you can make it real easy. I'm still questioning though how you get the ROMs on there though. It feels like you'd need to still side load that somehow because it's not like there's a memory card on the. Although you could go to a browser and theoretically download it and install it, right?
Yeah, you could do some sort of download, I'm sure. Which, those type of services would get cease and desist pretty quickly. I think they could decipher those pretty quick. But then it always goes back to just like the control. Yeah. If you're just using buttons and D-pad on the screen, that just sucks anyway. But
so did you guys have any like major hits among the family? The things that you liked there, or blew you away, or entertained the kids?
Yeah, my kids like that. What's the racquetball game?
Oh, that was highlight thing.
Yes. They like that game quite a bit. I found it to be like kind of inconsistent as like to be really competitive at it. I don't think you could really do that, be really competitive at it, but
the presentation
for what it was, it was really cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I forget what that was. It was called Throwback, I think.
Yeah, it sounds right. Kind of like, I mean, it was highlight, but it seemed like they were really trying to capture a Windjammers sort of vibe is kind of how I felt. And it was kind of weird because they must have debuted that as a new arcade game, but then they also had a kiddie cab version of it, which I thought was kind of funny. To like look like it basically looked like an arcade 1-up, which is probably what it was, and they reskinned it.
That's true. Yeah.
Parts, but yeah, it was kind of cool to see. My son and I did play a little bit of that. I crushed him.
Yep. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, again, the video game arcades get less. Well, I don't know if it's a less, but it's just that one kind of row.
Yeah.
Of arcades
the pinball's in the main really hall. Taken over.
Yeah. They did step up the Japanese stuff a little bit more.
Yeah.
I thought that scooter game was pretty interesting. The kids love that quite a bit.
Which was basically Mario Kart, except you played riding like a kid's scooter and had to like
pump. And you had to pump.
Yeah, pump the pedal on it the whole time, which was fucking exhausting.
Yeah. There was some Japanese game that was basically Mario Party mini games.
Oh,
did you play that one?
I did not.
It was on one of those candy cabs, and it was basically you would just go into this mini game, and it was three colored buttons in front of you, and it was just different things that you had to press these buttons in order, or you had to hit them as fast as you could, or whatever. That one was pretty fun.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, you said your wife said when we had lunch together that she was really into that play date thing. So, did you guys order one when you get home?
We have not ordered one. I've not brought it up since to remind her, but
surprise.
I think that yeah, I think that thing is really cool. It's just you have to wonder like the longevity of it. Like how long would you actually play those games? But
Yeah, I still never found it after you guys said it, where it was roughly, and I walked through I'm sure I'm just
Yeah,
oblivious because it's so small.
it's pretty tiny.
Yeah.
It's like 2 inches by 2 inches, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, my son was really into Death Ball, which Death Ball's fucking awesome. So, yeah, we played a lot of Death Ball. He wanted to play that every chance he got. He's always really big into like the stupid computer setups too. Like to him, it's just so fascinating, and like that he gets to play like with a mouse and keyboard. Like, dude, I don't know. Like, we don't need to be doing this, but we discovered has this weird hidden talent where he's fucking amazing at Taito's Ice Cold Beer, which is basically a game where it is an arcade game, but it's more of like a carnival type arcade
Mechanical.
game, I would say. Yeah, it's the backdrop is supposed to be bubbles and beer. So it's like a Swiss cheese with holes everywhere, and you control using two joysticks like a metal bar that raises up, and you have to balance a ball bearing on that and navigate it around the wrong holes, which are pitfalls, and get it in the exact right hole that you're supposed to. And there's 10 levels or 10 holes that you need to work your way up through that progress across this game vertically. And I've always liked the game, but find it incredibly difficult, and I don't ever make it past like 4. And my son was just like crushing it. I think he got to 10, never beat 10, but he would consistently get to like levels 8 and 9, and you'd pull off these moves where he was just like running the ball vertically and horizontally across the entire playfield in ways that like I would have never considered doing, and he did it like so seamlessly. It was wild.
And that entire game hinges on like a panic mode, right?
Yes.
Like you just panic and then you fuck it up, right?
Yep.
But like watching him, he has that panic mode, but he has the reflexes or whatever to know exactly what to do to get it where it needs to go. It's nuts.
It's kind of sick. I got some video and I threw it up on Twitter. I'm sure some people saw, but I just like was blown away at watching him play that. And like every time he would play, like especially in the Garcade, he'd just like draw a crowd. There'd be like 8 people watching like this little kid just destroy this game. I think he was mad that he never got 10, but I was like, you can save that for next year. Give yourself a challenge. And then he really wanted me to buy one of those, for the low price of $5,500. He could do this at home. So
yeah, to get to number 9 and then just to get one more. I mean, once he gets to that, then it's like, well, he did it. What
once you climb the mountain, you're not going to do it again, right? He did end up playing, I don't know, I think this is like later on after it was just him and I don't think you guys were there, watched him, but this other guy played the machine next to him and just ran the thing. Like he'd get to 10, started over, get to 10. It was crazy, but he had this weird strategy where his was like super herky jerky. Like he just like tapped stuff really weird. It was a completely different play style, but it worked for him. So, but yeah,
I suppose if you can kind of bounce the ball, it can't really get into a hole nicely, right?
Yeah, it's a great game. It's just one of those games that you don't see the original version anymore for good reason, because mechanically that thing's got to be a nightmare, especially when they were building them back in like the 80s. So, but the new versions are very cool.
Even
but they
the new ones
down
break
constantly. Yes. Yeah. I swear when we were kids too, and maybe it's just my perspective from being a little kid, but I swear it was bigger. Like, I always felt like those things were like I felt like the playfield was double the size, but that's probably not correct. It was probably just because I was like 4, looking at the thing in an arcade.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I think my wife and I, and well, your family, just watching him play, it's just like I don't understand the finesse. Like, this is wild. If only that was a skill we could monetize and you could make a living off of that.
Mm-hmm. He'd be set.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting year too, in the sense that like it was full of people, but I didn't run into too many people I knew. And I think a lot of that is because we're chasing kids now, plus you're focused on so many other things. But I bumped into the Guys, Games, and Beer people, a couple of them just briefly. I ran into Jason, TJ Kasuni, and Matt from Mega Math on YouTube. But there were some other people we wanted to talk to. It's Rocket Sauce. A couple others that I didn't even realize were there until I started looking at Twitter feeds after, and it's like I didn't see any of those people.
Isn't that weird? Like
Yeah,
even YouTubers, I didn't see anybody really. I saw you.
yeah. Well, I'm not a YouTuber.
But yeah, I think a lot of it was me because like on Saturday it was basically like I was like 1, 2, 3. There's kids 1, 2, just like counting heads
Yeah, yeah. You guys are
constantly.
outnumbered, so yeah, you don't have. It's not like my wife and I. It's just like we just each got to keep track of one. But yeah, you guys heads on a swivel, I'm sure.
Yeah, and all it took, like we lost them constantly because they would just like stop for a second and look at something, and then it would be like, well, the crowds enveloped them. So
Yeah, yeah. I was basically that second day, like just pretty much always keeping a hand on my son's shoulder because I was like,
hmm
I'm gonna lose you as soon as because he would just walk,
yeah.
he didn't care. And then he'd get mad at
hmm
me because he'd be in the vendor hall. And I'd like stop and look at something, he'd walk 10 feet away. He's like, why didn't you say something? I'm like, I don't know, why didn't you pay attention? Like I could still see you out of my peripheral. It was fine. So I don't know.
I think my daughter was jealous. She kind of saw how your daughter and your wife kind of go out on their own and do their own thing, and
Yeah.
my daughter was like, "Can't we just leave the boys and just go shop somewhere else?"
Yeah. Yeah, I would say with my wife and daughter, they go there more so just to like go and dick around in downtown Milwaukee than anything. Like, yeah, they spend a few hours
Mhm.
shopping the vendor hall on Saturday, but that's not really what they're for there at all. So
Yeah,
they didn't go into the arcade more than like 30 minutes probably, and it was mostly just to walk through and see what was there. They had no interest, so which I get it. So I can't complain.
yeah. This was the first year we didn't stay downtown, and I think that might be the way it's gonna go now.
Really? You didn't like the convenience of being like right across from it?
There's just not enough for like if I'm not buying a lot, doesn't the convenience isn't as good.
Sure.
Um, and it like closes at 8 on Saturday anyway, so it's not like it's like a really late night or
That's true.
get back somewhere else. But usually it's because I bring my whole family. Most of them don't go Friday, so it's not fair for them to just sit in a hotel.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's worked out better since that market has opened right next to the
hmm
venue because that's where um my wife and daughter go on Friday night as they go to that, like they call it the Third Street Market Hall, and it's basically just like an indoor restaurant and like event center. There's like video games in there and shuffleboard and 7 different restaurants and a bar, and then attached to that there's also like a TJ Maxx and a Kohl's and some other places. So they go
Yeah.
shop all that, and it's conveniently
Yeah.
like half a block away. But before that, you're right. There wasn't a whole lot. It's actually like kind of wild in the short amount of time that they've been doing that downtown, how much that's kind of like revitalized and built up almost around that 2 3 block area. There's a lot of new stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I could see your point. If you're not hauling piles and piles of games over, which I mean, you used to bring a tote that you would
hmm
fill with stuff. So yeah, yeah, I kind of like to just roll out of bed, and I really like that Spring Hill Suites one, just because like I hate dealing with the parking ramps and everything anyway. So the fact that they'll valet and they actually
yeah.
reduced their prices this year. So valet was only $20 a day, which is about what it costs you to park at the parking ramp anyway. So like that's totally worth it for me to just be like, yeah, you deal with the headache.
Yeah. I'm waiting to see what happens with my parking because so on Friday I went into the parking ramp and you just assume in the forever history that I've ever parked in these things, you pay at the end, right?
Right.
So Friday night was done. It was after midnight. And I go up and there's like a thing on the wall. It's like you just scan this QR code and pay or whatever. So then I paid it. It was $20 to pay. And then it's like I got look at the receipt closer and it's like I paid event parking for Saturday.
So you got Friday for free?
I don't know, because then I just left because there's no gates or anything. It's just like a thing that just looks at your license plate or whatever. So then I showed up Saturday, and then we left at whatever time, and I tried to pay again, and they're like, "Oh, you already paid," because I put in my license plate, and they're like, "Yeah, you're good to go. You already paid." So I just left. So I don't know if they're going to be like, "Hey, buddy, you were there Friday and Saturday. You owe us money," but we'll see.
That's pretty sweet if it works out that way. Is that the one next to the Hilton you parked at, or a different one?
Next to the Kohl's on the other side there.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
that's funny. Well, that could work out well. I mean, God, it's not worth investing in the technology to like crack down and like, video surveillance cars, for them. I'm sure they don't give a shit. So you probably got a free night. So
we'll see. I don't know what they do. I mean, I guess they could find my license and track me down somehow, but
I mean, worst case, you charge another $20, I think. So
right. I mean, I tried to pay, and the app wouldn't let me. So
you tried to be a good citizen. Yeah, that's all that matters. Yeah, it is funny too, because I think both you and I left the shows like pretty early on Saturday. Like we were kind of done by 6. Like, in previous years, it had been like every minute I had to soak it out of that to try and stay, but.
Well, it was just exhausting because you would try and play games toward the end of the night, and it was just no letting up. It was just constant.
Yeah, and once the kids are kind of over it, then it's like, well, and at some point, because we did the Friday night too, like my back is just killing me from constantly walking and standing and playing. Because you're standing and then tensing up playing arcade games, so it's just like it does a number on you.
Yeah.
Even my son was bitching by like, I don't know, 11 o'clock on Saturday that like, oh, my legs are so tired. Like we ended up eating lunch at like basically noon because he just couldn't. We had to leave by like 11 and go back to the hotel for a bit.
Yeah. Well, my kids had that too, but then they were like, "Ooh, the scooter game's open," and then they'd sit there and pump their legs on. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. Your legs are tired.
Yeah, you're not that tired. But yeah, we got to meet up for lunch at our favorite place, Doc's Smokehouse, unofficial sponsor of the annual MGC episode of Weekend Rental Podcast. So
we were worried, but it was the same.
It was the same, and they were actually not busy at noon on Saturday, like not compared to what they were when I stopped and got fries later. So yeah, and they actually sat us all at one table this time. Weird concept when you ask for a table for so many people, they don't split you across two.
Yeah,
it was delicious.
Yeah, I think that's the new meta for finding lunch. Going at actual lunchtime. I always thought like, oh, you don't want to go at lunchtime because you go middle of the afternoon where nobody's thinking about lunch. Yep. But I think everybody thought that way. So the real meta is to actually just go at lunchtime.
I agree. Yeah, it was like 1/3 capacity, I feel like. But yeah, food is great as always. The turkey. I will say they seem to have like sliced the turkey thinner this year, which I didn't appreciate because I always liked that you were getting like side bacon cut of like turkey. I mean, it was still delicious, but it gets cold faster. And then they had like chicken, or they had gumbo as a side on the day that we were there. And I got that, and it was delicious because it had the sausage and the turkey and meats in it. It was.
Oh wow! My kids didn't eat any of it, so.
I know you guys got kind of a buffet style going on over there because you're just handing meats left and right. I think you're just gonna have to do what my kids started doing, and you just order them like the side dish of mac and cheese, and like, here you go.
Yeah,
because that seemed to work this year for us. Because I've tried to encourage them to eat the meats, but they just don't appreciate it, so which is sad.
I'm kind of getting that way because we tried to do a whole bunch of new stuff. Like we went to Portillo's. They're like, oh yeah, it's hot dogs, but it's Chicago style, so they didn't like anything that was on it. They just wanted a hot dog with ketchup on it. It's like, oh gosh, that's the one thing they don't put on it is ketchup.
Right, you can't ask for that. Yeah, it's funny when we ate that Friday night. my son's eating, he orders the pho, and your son's just looking at him like he's an alien eating like God knows what's in that bowl. Which I don't know, like our kids are weird in that aspect. It's because I don't know if it's just because we've always like Jill, my wife and I have just kind of always liked that stuff. So since they've been little, we just kind of took them to that sort of stuff for the most part, especially my son, like he'll eat damn near anything. He also disgusts me though, because like he'll eat like squid and he loves mussels and stuff, which I think are basically just boogers. So I don't know.
Yeah.
He's easy to please still. My daughter is way more picky. Hence why she got the mac and cheese at Doc's. So
mm-hmm.
the turkey was disgusting and I about disowned her. So I'm also like a big fan of collard greens. I don't know why more places don't have that around here because like God, they're good.
Mm-hmm.
They were amazing.
I didn't try them there. I should have.
It's hard to make a vegetable bad when you like put it in broth and add bacon. You know, you could pretty much put snot in there, and I'm gonna be like, "Oh, this is great." So, I was jealous of your pulled pork though. We should have maybe gotten the 2 plates.
That was pretty good.
I was pretty full. Yeah, Doc's is still great. I'm glad that our fears of new ownership and it being ruined didn't take place. So I will say they need to work on that bathroom though. I don't think I've ever been in a restaurant bathroom that smelled more like just bus station or like gas station, like stale piss. Like I don't know what you got to do. Send a kid in there at the end of the night with bleach. That's unacceptable. Like it was gross.
That was pretty bad.
It just hit you like a wall as soon as you opened the
door. When that's worse than the convention bathroom, right. You got a problem.
Man, yeah. Speaking of that, like when they have that many people there were multiple times where I tried to go take a piss, and I'm like, I am not queuing up in a line.
There's nothing.
Like, I'm just gonna wait.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's a well-attended event when every bathroom is like out the door. That's like you don't see that except for like concerts or sports games, like at arenas and stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. They're gonna have to get the piss troughs and those things in there.
God, I love a good piss trough. Why did that go away? More places need to bring those back. Except in the unfortunate situations where I don't know if you've ever been in the situations where you're at the piss trough, but it's also turned into the puke trough, and then you're just waiting to watch the puke slide down in front of you as you're. That's a spring break experience that I had, and one I would like to not repeat. And actually, my buddy was further down the line from me, and it disgusted him so much he also contributed to the puke.
So gosh,
it was the fun that kept on.
It was just puke at that point.
Kept on giving. Yeah. But I did notice. I don't know what it is with Wisconsin, but they're like Quick Trips or whatever gas stations they are. Because we hit a couple of them. They've got the delightful, chest to floor urinals. I don't know what it is about a urinal that just like sinks all the way to the floor that pleases me, but I think it's like probably the greatest thing ever. If I could have one in my home, I would.
I guess, but then you always look down at your shoe and there's like some there's some spray that ends up on your shoe.
But you avoid the splashback onto your hands, which my son and I were trying to explain to my wife, like, because he loved it too. He's like, yeah, it's great. It doesn't like splash back. And my wife's like, why does the pee get on your hands? I'm like, well, I'm like, think about a urinal. You're literally pissing onto a wall from about, I don't know, 10 to 6 inches away. I mean, it's coming back no matter what you do. So, yeah. Boy, this podcast took a weird turn.
Yeah. We're covering every inch of MGC this year.
Yeah. So it was good. I can say I'm at the point where I probably would not be upset if I missed a year of MGC anymore, because there's not much I haven't seen or done, and as much as I like it, it's kind of an exhausting 4-day sprint. And if my kids weren't so in love with it, I probably would maybe not be going as often. I could probably do it from like a year or two away.
Yeah. I mean, I did a year away that one time and it was like fine.
Yeah.
Kind of missed it, but I mean, this year especially, like after everything and then an 8-hour drive in the rain the entire way that was a little bit rough. Usually the ride back, it usually isn't too bad, and you're just kind of like zoned out and just kind of recharge your battery a little bit just by sitting in the car. But this was, you had to be paying attention and be on your game the entire ride home, and that was exhausting.
Yeah, and it was heavy rain, like from Madison to all the way home for both of us, which for anyone listening, that's a good 7 hours of driving that you're doing, kind of white knuckling it the entire time. And it was like,
that's hard.
It was, it's just cool enough too that you were like always questioning, like, okay, is this starting to freeze? Like, do I need to be, more careful? So yeah, not great.
It wasn't the worst we've had, but
no,
it's just the duration was just there was no.
It takes a mental.
There's no break.
It is funny though, like even my wife and I were talking how it seems like when you get to like Eau Claire as you're going out there, like Eau Claire to Madison seems like a fucking eternity. But when you're headed back, like I feel like you go from Milwaukee to Minneapolis in like an hour and a half. Like it just all goes so fast.
Yeah.
Which is wild. But oh God, I was so pissed too. So I don't know if I told you about this, but on the way there, we stopped at, well, you guys stopped in Madison too and went to the zoo. Well, then we ate and I went to go get gas. And on this particular exit onto Interstate from Madison, there's 2 gas stations across the road from each other, but it's 4 lanes of traffic. So I just happened to be closer to the one. So I go and I pulled up.
They're both quick trips.
No, they're not. One's an Amoco, one's a Shell. And I went to the Shell and I should have known better because the motherfuckers did not have a sign displaying their gas price. It was $4 a gallon, and I didn't realize it until I'd already swiped my card. Literally across the street was $3.49. I was like, "Oh my gosh, be kidding me!" So they were just totally scamming people. It cost me $50 to fill up our little car, which was bullshit. I was so pissed off.
That's damn near illegal.
Yeah. It was,
wow.
It's just a grift, like 100%. They know exactly what they're doing. And I I had to do the double take because I was like, oh, that says $3.49, right? Because the sun's like glaring off of it. And I looked down, I'm like, shit, that's a 9. I'm like, what the fuck? So then I thought about doing that. Well, do I just pump like 5 gallons? But I'm like, no, I'm not going to stop again. But yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah.
Total
that's
scam.
Wild.
Total
wow.
Scam. So if you're in Madison, don't go to the Shell near the mall. It's not good. So you've been warned. I don't know. I'm curious to see though what they say attendance wise. Usually Dan takes a couple days off. Dan Lucent's the guy who's one of the co-founders, and basically it's his full-time job to run the thing. And generally you get an email that tells you like attendance records and things. And last year, I know they said they got over 10,000. I'm guessing you can add a few more thousand of that this year based on what we saw. So
yeah,
pretty wild how successful that show continues to be.
I would have laid money down that it was going to be less this year.
Yeah.
Given how the economy is and how much I just feel like in general, the
retro scene,
collector space at least is decreased. But man, I was wrong.
Yeah. I was thinking the same as you and was shocked at how packed it was. Which good on that convention for doing that. I mean, makes a lot of people real happy, and I'm sure I can't imagine like those guys that put that, like you feel like, I bet they feel like they're probably on the verge of like complete nervous breakdown, like for 3 months out of the year, trying to pull the thing together at the last minute and stuff's going sideways. And yeah, it's pretty nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just the amount of people and stuff that happens just in guys' games and beer room,
Yeah.
And then you put that on a times 20 scale. It's pretty nuts.
Yep. I still stand by, of all the conventions I've been to, this one is my favorite, especially now in its current incarnation. I miss the old like small like scrappy days, but what they've turned it into is pretty goddamn incredible. So
yeah, I do miss like the big arcade room. You know, the crazy arcades that you don't play. You're never seen. You know, but I guess you
I don't miss the
just go to Galloping Ghost for that.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that old arcade room, you're right. Like there was some amazing stuff in there back when pinball was a much smaller part of the show, but it was in that Hilt or Sheraton, and it was like a low ceiling, tiny room,
Mm-hmm.
no ventilation, so it was just like BO and farts. Like
Mm-hmm.
just and you'd be sweating your ass off. It was fucking brutal.
Your hair is just like that. You can feel the static electricity just in the air.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. There were some arcade cabs there you'll likely never see again. And yeah, and that was back when they were like Galloping Ghost would bring stuff. I don't think they've been bringing stuff. But they would bring a lot of really cool machines back then. I don't know what.
Yeah,
why
they used
that
to have a
stopped
room for
how,
them.
but
Yeah. I wonder what happened there.
maybe it just became too much work, and
I mean,
a
yeah,
lot of stuff
logisticals.
break. Yeah, yeah, and if you've been to Galloping Ghost, you can only imagine the hell it must be to try and get any machine in or out of that fucking place.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah. Well, covered MGC a lot more thoroughly than I thought we would, but maybe we can get to our staff picks before we move on to our weekend rental. I'll go first with my staff pick. It's not gonna be a long one, but I got that new Sum 41 album that came out at the end of March. Their final farewell album. They're on their farewell world tour now. I think they play their last couple shows in Toronto beginning of next year, when they're finally done. But they put out a double album, Heaven Hell. I don't know. It's like, I don't know how you say the title. It's like Heaven X Hell. So I don't know if like one. I don't know if it's like Heaven Cross Hell or if it's just Heaven and Hell. It's not but
well,
they're just
yeah, it's not and that's Black Sabbath.
Yeah, that's true. So basically, what they did with this one is, they haven't really been the pop punk band that they became famous for in a long time. They kind of tried to revisit that around 2006. They put out like an album that felt like a throwback to what had made them popular early on after they went heavier with Chuck. But they've basically been like more of like a power metal, like, or cheese metal band the past 10 years.
Really?
So their last two albums were really, their last one especially was, I love as a metal album. It's not really a punk album. So what they did with this one is Heaven is just more pop punk. Like they kind of went back to their, Fat Lip, Does This Look Infected sound, and that's more what that is. And then the Hell side is just heavier stuff, but it's not as heavy as what they've done with 13 Voices or the one previous to this. But it is still very good and very guitar focused. There's a lot more solos and stuff on the second side. It's only 20 tracks, only 50 minutes, because typically if you're a punk rock kid, you're used to a 20-minute to 30-minute album. So it makes sense that, two albums is an hour. They've been doing the whole press circuit, and the band's talking about how this is, or the lead singer, it's like, oh, this is the album I've always wanted to make, greatest album I've ever done. I'm not going to say it's that, but I'm going to say for a band that's been around as long as they have, it's a very nice farewell, and there's a lot of quality tracks on there. So at the very least, give it a listen, because I think a lot of people just kind of stopped following them after Does This Look Infected, and really their whole catalog is pretty solid. I would say their return to pop punk in 2006 with Underclass Hero is skippable. It's not that it's bad, it just feels like a band trying to do the thing that made them famous. But they put out an album following that called Screaming Bloody Murder that I think is kind of a masterpiece. And then the two rock or heavier metal focused albums following it, I think, are really good too. So give this one a look. Maybe check out like the 10 to 15 years of their discography that you didn't know existed, because it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of that because I basically, you have the two big ones that they made, and after that, I never really looked into it at all, So yeah, I'm definitely gonna, especially when you say it's, a little bit more metal. That's a little bit more my.
Yeah.
That's a good mix for me. So I think that would be right up my alley.
Yeah, I should find the name of the one right before this one. Because that'd be the one I think you'd really like. Let's see, what's that one called? I forget. Oh, Order and Decline. Yeah, you'd like that one. That is 2019. That is just a straight metal album, and it's awesome.
Okay.
There's like so many epic guitar solos in it. But yeah, so that's mine. Just a send off from a pretty awesome band from our youth.
Yeah, I would do. Is it they're just not? Was there a reason they're stopping, or is it just kind of like
I think
run its course?
Yeah, I think the lead singer is just like in interviews he's like, well, I started this band when I was 16. He's gone through a lot of stuff too with his wife trying to commit suicide like 11 years ago or whatever. Him basically going into a hospital and being told he was gonna die from his drinking, like and he's had a bunch of health issues since then. He's now sober, but it's like it's been his whole life, and he's probably exhausted and the toll it's taken. So I think it's just kind of, I would imagine a band like that where, yes, they're big. They have like pretty good Spotify numbers, but they've always had to put in the work, especially in the like post, MTV years. Like I have to imagine when you hit like 40 something, you're just like, I can't keep doing this forever. Because
right.
I did watch an interview with the band, and some of the band members were just like, yeah, I really wish we were just going to keep going. He's like, no, we're done. He's like, we're never getting back together. This is it. So,
yeah, I mean, could you imagine singing Fat Lip for 30 years though? Like, that would be a.
Well, and it's funny too.
That would drive me nuts if I had to sing that song for that many years.
Yeah, and it's funny when you watch, like, if you watch any of like their concert and festival stuff from like the last few years, they'll do Fat Lip, but they play a lot of like the metal stuff that you can tell the fan base in general is just not there for, and they don't get it because they really go on stage these days and like treat it like they're a metal band. And it's just like the crowd's like kind of into it, and then they get to Fat Lip and like everybody loses their shit. So
yeah,
I gotta imagine that was a song they were sick of playing back in like 2002, and they've had to do it ever since. Still a great song, but yeah, very much a 17-year-old's mentality.
Yep.
For the song.
Huh. Yeah, you're just never gonna, reach the same highs. So it's like, well,
no,
if it's just exponential decline, well, what's the point, right?
Right, and the resurgence is there right now. Like a lot of those legacy pop punk bands are getting their highs again, so that's only going to last for a while, and then you're just becoming the nostalgia act. So it's like, get in, well, that's still popular, but people are still buying the new stuff, and then don't find yourself being like, the cruise ship or fair circuit band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Eve 6 coming to Ribfest this year. Like, you don't want to be Eve 6. I mean, I still like Eve 6, but
yeah.
A band that's only relevant because their lead singer is amazing on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's not for the music anymore.
No.
How about you? What's your staff pick?
My staff pick is, so there's been a trading card game, a Disney trading card game that the kids have been kind of looking at. It's been almost impossible to get. It's been very popular. Sold out a lot of places. Until recently, the kids been able to buy it, learn how to play. So we played a couple of rounds of that. It's kind of cool. There's no most of those card games like Magic has lands and Pokemon has energy cards. There's none of that stuff in there. So it's kind of nice to just not have like a deck full of that garbage that you just need to have in a deck, You just kind of use your existing cards and decide which one you want to play and which one you want to use as a resource to, do an attack or whatever. And you can attack each other's characters, but the main thing that you need to do to get to win the game is you just have to get to 20 points, and each character has different point values and stuff like that. So it's kind of an interesting take on a collectible trading card game. So yeah, we've been playing that, and then the new set just recently came out. So we saw that at MGC, and the kids were pretty excited about that. My one son bought one pack, and he hit like a $40 Ursula card, so he was pretty excited.
Yeah. So are these like Pokemon prices for packs, like $6-7 a pack, or?
Yeah. I think it was $5 he paid for one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's at least affordable then to get into.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the game is a little more enjoyable than Pokemon.
Right. And it seems like they hold their value a little bit better than Pokemon. Pokemon, like you look at even the cool things, it's like, oh, they're like $1, you know. There's not much value in there, so overprinted.
Fandom is hard to slow down, so I could see how that would be a good investment.
Yep.
Cool. What's that? What's it called?
Disney Lorcana. But it's pretty cool. They have some cards, you know, they have like Scrooge McDuck, and they have some old stuff that, you know, a little bit more our era.
Or do they have any live action like properties?
I don't think I've seen any live action stuff. It's all animated stuff, but you know, there's Disney Afternoon stuff. There's a bunch of kind of stuff that you wouldn't think that they would really get into, but
oh, that's cool. Especially for the nostalgia grab, even if you're not into the game, then at that point, at least you get like some characters that you have a childhood attachment to.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to keep an eye out for that one.
We'll see.
Come across it.
We'll see. You know, those type of things come out, and then they're popular, and then the people that make the game mess it up, or you know.
Sure.
Although I would say Pokemon has messed up the game quite a bit over the years, yet that still keeps going. So.
Yeah. It's too big to fail.
Right.
Well, I'll have to keep an eye out for those. We've been playing a lot more board games lately, so.
Mm-hmm. We did. I'll just do an addendum. Is we went to Five Below on the way back. So.
Oh, nice! Did you get Zillionaires on Mars?
The one in St. Cloud didn't, or Monticello, I think, didn't have it. Couldn't find it there. So.
Did you find any decent games to pick up?
Found some. Yep. Found some. There was one called like Gen Z versus the World Trivia, so we haven't tried that yet. But
I looked at that one and I was like, I'm not going to know any of these answers, so I just like it's just going to make me feel old.
Yeah. It was funny though because I was explaining to Amanda those Japanese sodas that we had.
Yeah.
And how they work with the marbles and everything. Yep. And then sure enough, Five Below has them.
Oh yeah.
But we bought them there.
Yep. They got my daughter.
And she couldn't believe it.
The bubble teas there too. She gets those all the time.
Yep. Yeah. I think we bought one of those too, like make your own bubble tea or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Five Below's a all right store for like cheap crap. You know, like it entertains the kids. Mm-hmm. I honestly like since the one moved into town here, we just do like the crazy Christmas, and we'll just go spend like $50 on each kid, and it's just like, oh, you got a literal mountain of presents. You know, it's quantity over quality, but they still get a kick out of like opening like a bunch of crap that we throw out inevitably like 2 days later. But
yeah, that's definitely going to be in our rotation, like that type of thing, because I mean, for $5, you're still getting a good quality. Seems like out of the stuff that you do get. So
yeah, I would say for the most part their stuff is, I mean, you got to watch some of the stuff. Like I feel like the household stuff is kind of a rip off. Like they'll try and sell you like hand sanitizer, like face wipes for like $5. It's like, well, no, this actually costs $2, but yeah. And the t-shirt wall too, like getting a t-shirt for $5 is a good deal.
Even if it washes off in like 2 washes.
Yeah.
Even 100%. So,
100%. Yeah. And actually a lot of the ones we've gotten have like hung in there pretty well. The problem that most of the time we run into is just that t-shirt wall is decimated. So like you're just basically like sifting through piles of rags to see what the design is, and Yeah. But yeah, I do love it for like board games and stuff. It's a great little spot.
Yep.
Nice. Well, weekend rental time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the weekend rental, of course, for the uninitiated, is it's a game we pick for a given system. We picked the Super Nintendo this time. We are going with Blues Brothers. We play that game independently, and then we kind of make our decision on as to whether we would buy, rent, or burn that game. Burn meaning light it on fire. And yeah, Blues Brothers for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, a console that came out well after children were aware of what the Blues Brothers was. So it's interesting to me that this was a license on that platform.
This was a long-running series, apparently. I had totally forgotten there's an NES one.
There's an NES Blues Brothers?
There's an NES Blues Brothers.
I don't own that. I don't think I've even seen that.
Yeah, and there's a Game Boy, and there's Super Nintendo, and then there's Blues Brothers 2000 on the 64. So...
Oh, this is
okay, it's a video game series.
It's a port though, so these are the same. This is one of those things where it like came out on. So this is got to be a late release on the NES. I wonder what the price is on that. $50.
Look. Yeah, probably about 50, 60, I think.
Wow, I had no idea, or maybe I did and forgot. But
yeah, I had completely forgot about that.
And Game Boy, is the Game Boy one just another port of the same thing too?
Who knows? Yeah, but this game is actually a sequel to the first one, so it's a completely new game compared to the NES one.
The cover art looks the same between the Game Boy, Blues Brothers, and the Super Nintendo one. So they all share a similar. So it would seem to me that they probably all came out around the same time period, right? Like probably within a year or so of each other.
Yep.
The NES one is 55 loose. Super Nintendo is around 25. Game Boy is around 30. Interesting.
I mean, they have to be somewhat rare because, yeah, who's buying Blues Brothers games?
Okay. Yeah, certainly uncommon. I mean, you don't come across them.
No.
Just apparently not a valuable IP. Wow, that's crazy. I would have never guessed there was so many versions of Blues Brothers on. I mean, the one console where it made sense would have been like, yeah, if there was an Atari 2600 version of Blues Brothers, I'd have gotten that.
Yeah.
But but yeah, pretty well. I mean, I guess NES makes more sense than Super NES, but yeah, we did some play of this too over on Twitch, so maybe some of you caught that or caught our post stream video as it hung out there for a while, but I don't know. This is definitely one of those platformer games that feels like somebody made a generic platforming game and they just shopped around, or somebody was shopping around with a license to get a game made, and they just slapped characters into a world that has zero to do with the source material. I mean, it was, other than the Blues Brothers being in there and some musical elements, not even really musical elements, but visual musical elements. There was nothing. Like, you start out in a forest. There's no blues music playing. You're collecting notes and
factory.
Records. Right, but
yeah,
it makes no
and you're back
sense.
In the forest. There's no progression feel to it.
No, tons of permadeath. It felt like almost like a Amiga era platforming game.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, the original, when I was looking at the NES one, that one was definitely a port of an Amiga game. It's this game. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the same for this one, but it does have that feel to it. The levels are super short. Like
yeah.
If you could know your route, I looked this up. The speed run is 17 minutes.
Really?
And there's like 30 some levels.
So we saw at least half the game when we streamed.
About 30 seconds a piece.
Yeah.
Pretty close. and it's 30 seconds a level, which I could see. I mean, doing it legit, I could see people beating these levels in that amount of time. They're pretty short.
I think the thing that bothers me too is like it does the worst thing that a platformer can do, and that's know it's a bad game, so make it a race against the clock. And then it has the worst version of a clock because it's not consistent. Like they literally adjust the clock time based on what the perceived level length, which is just a terrible game design.
They're just winging it. They're just like, oh, what do you think to put there?
Right.
And then so the collectibles are vinyl records, which you use for ammo to throw at enemies.
Right.
Every level you start at 0. You don't keep your records. You start at 0, but there's records all over the place. There's no scoring for the records, I don't think.
So there's no point bonus there's no incentive to collect them other than you need them for your attack.
Right, but they place them as if they're collectibles because they'll put like 10 of them in like a pyramid shape, or like it just seems like they should count for points or something. My thought is maybe you get an extra life if you get 100. I don't know if I ever proved that to be the case, but I don't know if there's levels that even had 100 in them.
Well, and that's like, beyond the records as a collectible, like the limited and sporadic power-ups that you get are pretty pointless too. There's one that makes you like ripped and you like muscle through your shirt, but we couldn't really tell that did much for you other than allows you to take one more hit. There was an invincibility thing, which had, if you're going to have an invincibility power up, like have a good animation to like kind of indicate that. It really wasn't good. I think like your character
there's some music. That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's like extra lives. So it's already very bare bones. Like all the enemies are stupid. I mean, it's just like generic, like porcupines and, pit traps and electric traps.
And the levels
sucks.
And the levels are very like square. So they'll go vertical and then they'll like razor back down to the other way. Yeah. And it's like it's just to save memory in whatever tile set they were putting this in. It just seemed like it was kind of
it's such a weird thing to see, like almost every level just wraps around in itself, and it's never interesting. It's just left to right, it's really lame. And the music is pretty awful. I think that's the one aspect of this game they could have, at least gotten that right and tried to make something that sounded like blues appropriate to fit the theme.
One would say they needed to get that right.
Yes, it would have been important. But yeah, pretty bad. And you could pick either brother from the outset, but it didn't change the gameplay at all. Other than maybe it adjusted.
There is 2 players
a little bit. What would you do with 2 players though? It would be so frustrating because you have to like stay on that screen.
Yeah, I think so.
Unless there's a 2-player mode that was cool that we didn't try, but yeah, I think the part where I lost my shit was that last level that we got to during the stream, at least, where you get to a level where there's like what appears to be an enemy on your shit right away, and then you realize that no, it's like a flying sky dragon that as a blues brother I'm supposed to hop on and traverse across the screen. And this is now like a scrolling like obstacle avoiding level. That's where I was like, they clearly didn't try, and they clearly developed something that had nothing to do with the property at all. It's just
not even there's not even a screen to say, like some text to say what's going on here.
And it's such an easy movie to gamify. It's got all the things like we talked about. Like there's police chases, there's like bar fights. There's a million things you could have done that would have fit into the continuity of the film, and none of that is even like looked at whatsoever. And I think the worst part of it is it isn't inherently bad. Like, it's not a great platformer, but it's perfectly fine for what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Maybe put a little more work into it.
Yeah,
Or just use a
the
different
part where
license.
I wish they would have just done nothing at all and put this out, because it would have been a perfectly fine platformer. It would have been nothing amazing,
Right.
Especially for Super Nintendo. I think it's kind of weak
Yeah.
for a Super Nintendo game.
And when you think about Super Nintendo, like, all the rage was come up with your dumb, fluffy mascot character. Like, they could have made up anything and put it in there, and it probably would have sold better than putting Blues Brothers on it to kids who are that's not going to appeal to whatsoever.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one thing that infuriated me was in this game. Any game that you jump to a rope or a chain or something like that, you should be allowed to just hold right and not have to have an issue, right? Because you're holding onto the rope. And I think the general consensus is that you're not going to let go of the rope until you press the jump button.
Right.
This game does not do that. You, if you, they have chains in these factory levels that you jump to the chains, to see Elwood's fit ass just right on this chain.
They really emphasize the detail in the butt crack and his back for some reason.
Yeah. But yeah, if you just hold right, you just fall right off the chain.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
Well, and it's a bizarre choice too, because like the chain is very wide. So it's like, why didn't they, give someone the option to even wiggle a little left and right on the chain if you want? But yeah, to have it instantly drop if you're not hitting up or down is stupid.
Yeah, if you had the wiggle, at least it would give you feedback to be like, okay, you have control of yourself on this chain, so you shouldn't go too far left, too far right, right?
Yep.
But no, it's just off or on, and if you hold the stick for too long, you're off. Took me a while to recalibrate my brain to play those levels, but
yeah, it's not an intuitive platformer in that sense. And then just some of the physics too, because there's so many moving platform sections where like the physics just don't feel good in those situations. And then we talked about too, where it's one of those games where it's got the like 3/5 perspective. So every time you do like the left and right, like that screen has to like slowly adjust and catch up with like your purview. And it's just sucky for trying to like plan out platforming jumps and trying to see what's maybe ahead off screen. Like it just kind of becomes nauseating. It's not as bad as some.
Yeah, if you're doing any, for sure. But yeah, if you're trying to do, some like left or right, quick left or right adjusting,
yeah,
it's pretty rough.
Yeah. The only thing that kind of saves it is at least they like really reined it in with like the movement speed, so it's not like one of those quick flicker back and forths. But then again, that presents its own problems because you try to look behind you and now you're waiting a second and a half for the screen to move over. It's really dumb. Really dumb. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably not a whole lot more to say about it. It's just so inherently generic and right down the middle in every single way for a game that I don't know. I don't know really who it's for, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? What would you give it on the Byron Burns scale?
Honestly, like this should be a rent because it's a fine game to play. But I think because it's a Blues Brothers game and they just took it in a direction that does not make any sense for that property, I have to consciously give it a burn.
Yeah,
it was fine, but like you said, there's so much stuff that is like you just missed the mark. You didn't understand what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, I I think I could give it a rent, but this would be like, this is the worst kind of rent. This is the kind that you rent to know that you would never buy it, and then you would also never rent it again. So it's essentially a burn. Yep. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I mean, I've had rents that would have pissed me off more as a kid, like, you know, Dick Tracy or Bart versus the Space Mutants. But this feels pretty close to, I would have been immediately regretting my weekend take home rental and know that that's what I've been stuck with. But the fact that it's like, the fact that it's a playable game is the only thing that gets it there for me. It is not a good game though, especially as a fan of that franchise. Like, I wanted so much better for it.
Yeah. We did play the 64 version
for 2000. Yeah. That seems like one that might be worth it.
Yeah. You the first level's in a prison, so they at least they started out somewhere that's at least in the theming wise with the movie.
Yeah, I think down the road. I need a break from the N64 for a while, but that one might be one we should dust off at some point.
Yeah. And I am kind of interested now to look at the NES one to see if it's I'm guessing it's kind of the same type of thing where it's just generic levels. And
you'd think so.
But
I'm curious on the Game Boy one. Gotta look that up.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's another Byron Burn down and another episode down. And another MGC down.
Yes. A lot of stuff happening. During our stream, which you can watch on twitch.tv/weekendrental, we're usually doing it on Tuesdays and on off weeks.
Yes.
Playing the game that we're going to play for Byron Burn. We kind of were talking about like what properties would be the latent awakenings in a video game form that appealed to older dumbasses, 40-year-old dumbasses like us, you know, where obviously this Blues Brother thing was selling to those people back in the day. So if I want to hear on an email or on Twitter at weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com, you know, like what is that property nowadays for us?
That's a good question.
But yeah, send us an email. Let me know. But until next time, be kind, rewind.